Nancy, where do things stand on infrastructure with the president trying to unite his party? He was in Michigan this week, but my reporting tells me that Democrats are trying to whittle down this $3.5 trillion bill down to somewhere around $2 trillion. What are you hearing? And what is the president hearing from moderates and progressives?
What I'm hearing is that the problem with whittling it down is that they don't know how much they need to whittle it down. They know it's got to come down from 3.5 trillion to somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 trillion. But while we hear a lot of progressives, a lot of members of the Democratic Party in the mainstream saying they're willing to come down, what you're not hearing, at least publicly, from Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, is that they're willing to come up. Joe Manchin, every time he talks to reporters, he is still on that $1.5 trillion mark. So he's not shown, at least publicly, any willingness to move. And that's one of the reasons that these talks are moving so slowly. They can't start to figure out what it is they're going to cut from this bill, which of these cherished programs they're going to have to let go until they know what the top line spending number is. And it seems it's been very difficult for the White House to get any traction with Manchin and Sinema on what that compromise number should be.
And Mariana, you're nodding your head here. What are you hearing on Capitol Hill about what could be on the chopping block here?
Well, Nancy's exactly right. They don't know exactly where to cut yet because they don't have those exact demands from Manchin and Sinema. You know, talking to progressives, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which really held strong to make sure that infrastructure vote did not happen until this agenda was completed, they are saying, well, you know, we don't have to even talk about cuts yet. We want to make sure that every single priority is still part of this bill, and the only way to bring it down is likely by, you know, sunsetting these programs a little bit earlier. That has tensions with the moderates who say, well, if you fund something for 2 to 3 years, guess what? The House could be under Republican control, so there's no guarantee that they will actually reauthorize these programs again, and maybe it's better to just go ahead and make permanent things that already exist, like the Affordable Care Act subsidies, and potentially close the Medicaid gap. Those are some of the things that moderates really want to make sure they can get soon and make sure that the American people feel that immediately.
And as all of this is being juggled, we got a September jobs report that was disappointing. What did it tell us about the COVID economy, and especially how people are struggling when you look at the unemployed, but also women?
Well, you've got the unemployed, you've got women, but you've also got an economy overall where employers are desperate to hire and they're finding shortages of workers. So you have this weird sense that people want to get back to work, but employers can't find the right people for those jobs. So part of it is training. A lot of it is childcare, and especially when you talk about women who the burden of childcare falls disproportionately upon. A lot of people are saying with COVID, with kids not necessarily fully back in school yet, I don't feel like I can get back into the workforce. And you're seeing employers struggling. And one of the things they're doing is they're raising wages, they're increasing benefits, they're doing all kinds of things. So the reality is it's actually in a lot of different professions, you talk about restaurants and some other things, it's a great time to be looking for work. But it's a tough economy out there for a lot of people still. So you've got this bifurcated picture on the jobs front.
And Nancy, President Biden sort of needed this win. I wonder what you make of the narrative that might be playing in some voters' minds when you have Mitch McConnell having his issues with Republicans and the deal that he made. You also have the president's approval numbers and Democrats fighting it out. What does this say to voters when you think about the narrative that people think about Washington and an inability to govern on both sides?
Well, it certainly makes it harder for the president to go into these negotiations, even with 2 members of his own party, when he's not coming in from a position of strength, when he isn't coming in and saying, look, the American people are clearly on my side. You need to come and meet me in the middle. His approval ratings are pretty low right now. They wanted a win with these jobs numbers today. Instead, they found themselves sort of cherry picking through the report to try to find some figures that actually suited them.
It's bad when you have to turn to page 3 of the report to find something good that you can point to.
At the end of the day, the best the president could do was to say, look, COVID was so bad in September. You had so many more cases. Those jobs numbers were bound to be bad. They'll be better next month.